Smyrna. So May, of course, would love to get back to victory lane, but we've seen the Rackley War Machines be quick all weekend long. And Gavin Bichelle and Dawson Sutton, they'll start up near the front of the field as the drivers salute the fans here on the front straightaway. You get a good look at the crowd here at New Smyrna. Lots of people turning up on a Saturday night. You can only imagine this is going to be even bigger when we get to tomorrow's main show.
See one of the drivers in the field, Anthony Cataldi, who is looking to try to make the most of his opportunity that he has in hand here tonight. You see our chief starter giving the signal for the drivers and teams to be prepared to wrap up their parade and pace laps, as we should be about a lap and a half away from the green flag.
Not too long before we get going and we get set to roll off with our first feature of the evening. Jason Vale, Dawson Sutton on that front row as the field will receive one to go when they cross the stripe this time by. And we will begin the prelude to the 58th annual Governor's Cup here from New Smyrna Speedway, a autumn institution around Central Florida, and one of the bigger races here, especially in the stretch now that the NASCAR National Series have concluded. This is sort of a window in the calendar, Eric, where we get to highlight a lot of the great action that we see all year long within the NASCAR route system. This is one of the marquee weekends of the year, especially here.
And especially when you look at the level of talent that we have in the field. As Pike mentioned, Jason Vale, Dawson Sutton, one of two Rackley War cars in the field. You can see his teammate just behind him there, and Gavin Bichelle. Between them, on the inside of row number 2, will be that of Hudson Bolger, a rookie on the Pro Late Model slate here at New Smyrna for 2023. And we mentioned Brad May trying to wrap up the Pro Late Model title. He will be starting on the inside of row number 3 in the white car number 9. The prelude to the Cup getting set to go green. Pro Late Models are underway from New Smyrna.
Vale and Sutton lead the field off into turn 1. Look at that launch there for Jason Vale to take off and rip around that top side to get out front by maybe a car length or two as the field begins to string out here under green flag conditions. You see the teammates from Rackley battle one another, but single file pretty quickly here, Eric, as we make our way through the opening laps of the Pro Late Model feature.
It looks like Dawson Sutton was very lucky that he had a teammate behind him in trying to cut him a break off turn 2 after he got very high off of turn number 2 while trying to hold down that second spot, but he was unable to keep pace with the top 2 right now as Vale continues to lead, and then it's Bolger from 3rd to 2nd. The Rackley War cars are kind of knotted together in the battle for 3rd as the top 2 continue to try to open up the margin over the rest of the field. Bolger with a big run in the middle of 3 and 4.
Bolger's starting to work that inside lane a little bit more. And I talked to Brad May earlier this afternoon, and he told me that this track isn't necessarily sensitive to particular lines. It's not particularly sensitive to rubber or tire wear. The two things that you have to consider when you're trying to figure out where you need to run here, weather and traffic. He told me you can jump up a lane, and if everybody else is running on the inside, you can go run the middle or run the top line, and it feels like a completely different racetrack just because of the rubber that's there, and more importantly, because of the clean air that you get on the nose. So watch these drivers find lanes and search around different lanes on this racetrack to find grip, to find speed, to find their way to the front.
All the while, we're starting to see one of the drivers in Gavin Bichelle, one of the Rackley War entries, lose a couple of spots. He just lost a position to Tim Sozio in the 16. Brad May almost gets up into the left side of the 25 off the corner. And there's the other number 9 in the field, Anthony Cataldi, trying to get in front of his teammate as well, just behind that 9 car in the 08 out of the same stable for Jet Motorsports. That's Nicholas Nago, who has a familiar crew chief on the box tonight. Jared Fryer, late model stock champion on the Cars Tour side, helping that 08 team as that battle continues for 3rd on back, with the top 2 tightening things up at the front as well.
Those two are starting to stretch out their lead. They're up front by almost a second and a half on the battle that Bichelle currently leads for that 3rd, or rather Sutton leads for the 3rd position. Asozio took a peek to the inside and then thought better of it. Meanwhile, lots of peeks and looks and thoughts from Hudson Bolger, but no move yet on Jason Vale to try and take the race lead.
One of the things we're noticing off the jump, and you mentioned it already, Pike, is the differing approach to entering and exiting the corner by the top two cars. Vail seems to be running a little bit higher, specifically here in the middle of 3 and 4, while that 17 car of Hudson Bolger could hook the bottom with the left side tires, and it appears to allow him an opportunity to close up in the center of the corner. Now Bolger goes high in 1 and 2. A little bit of cat and mouse as far as lane preference, especially being that they've got about a 2-second advantage from the rest of the field.
You've got the opportunity to search, and Bolger, you can see it there over the last lap or so. He just sort of backed off, and it almost looks like he's trying to watch and see what Vail is doing, where he's running, learn a little bit about the line that Vail is in, and maybe see if he can't find an advantage based upon where Vail is on the racetrack lap after lap. So we'll keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, Dawson Sutton continues to lead the train for the 3rd position.
All the while, Gavin Bushell has stopped the bleeding in about the 5th spot, got himself between that of the 16 of Sozio and the number 9 and the white number 9 of Brad May. Bushell now trying to regroup a little bit here after starting up towards the front of the pack in the 4th spot. As you mentioned, now it's a net loss of just 1 position, but after the pace that we saw out of that car in practice, I think many throughout the pit area expected that number 25 to be one of the pace setters, albeit this race is still in its early stages.
I talked to Michelle earlier this afternoon as well, and he told me that the first 80 or 85 laps of this race were going to be about execution. He said, I've had a really good car in practice all weekend long. We've been near the top of the boards or at them in pretty much every session we've run. I trust my crew, my team, my car. I just have to make sure that we get there and put ourselves in a position to win this race. And then in the final 15 laps, we'll try and go after it and make it happen. But we don't necessarily need to go all out all 100 laps of this. So I think, yes, you'd like to have a little bit more track position if you're Bushell, but you don't necessarily mind where you are now. You're still in the top 5, so it's not like you have to do that much work, especially if we get a yellow, to get back up front. It's just about making sure that you make it to the end so that you can race for the win.
It's a great point in this 100-lap event on this high-banked half-mile that was last repaved in 2007. So even though this racetrack may not be made up of some of the texture or consistency that we see in the Carolinas or being known as an abrasive or gritty surface, it does have some life to it. And that is something that these drivers, many of them young, some veterans, some experienced for several years in pro late model competition, have been coached and counseled throughout their preparation for this event. Sutton still 3rd, Sozio 4th. No changes at the front of the pack. And one of the drivers that has fallen off of the lead lap is that of Steve Redditt, who the leaders overtook about a couple of laps ago.
So Reddick goes to lap down. Ricky Moxley in the 37 would be next in line, but there's about a straightaway between Moxley and Jason Vail up at the front of the field. Also, Dawson Sutton has started to gap Tim Sozio a little bit too. They had been nose to tail for about 10 laps, and now all of a sudden that's come out to about a second or so between 3rd and 4th place. So I wonder if the handling on Sozio's car may be going away just a little bit, as here comes Gavin Bushell to the inside.
Bushell having a look to the inside for that 4th position. Now back up where he started, and Sozio was quick to slam the door before the blue number 9 was able to get up in there. Anthony Cataldi tried to get to the bottom lane as well. Passing has been told to be difficult here, especially as you got a handful of laps underneath you, like we're about to have here, with 20 laps being complete this time by. You've got to take whatever opportunity presents itself, and Cataldi did just that. He too gets around Sozio now to move up into the top 5.
Sozio slides back into the 6th position. Meanwhile, everybody now beginning to chase after those 2 leaders once again. The Rackley War Cars nose to tail. Bushell starting to gain on Dawson Sutton. I wonder if he may have figured something out in the last few laps. Watching his line, maybe a little bit of change here. Sutton and Bushell dive off into the corner, and Bushell's maybe about half a lane lower than Sutton in the corner. So I wonder if maybe there's a little bit of extra air on the nose, if that might just be playing into the way that Bushell's car is handling, because all of a sudden he just ate up about maybe 2 car lengths or so down the back straightaway into 3 and 4, and now as they come into 1 and 2 once again, they are properly nose to tail for the 3rd position.
And this is a big moment and a big night for that of Gavin Bushell for a lot of reasons. Many have the most recent memory of him in his cars. It looks like Sutton's going to give him the bottom and allow him the chance to make that pass for 3rd cleanly, albeit now that Bushell has a little bit more pace than that of Sutton, at least at this point in the race. But Pike, many remember the last time that we saw this driver in Pro Late Model competition competing for a victory. It got ugly in a late race Pro Late Model tangle at the Cars Tour event at Tri-County, where he took out Ashton Higgins coming to the checkered flag. The win was removed from that of Bushell, and he immediately started to realize that there may be a bit of a responsibility to try to rebuild some of that reputation that some of these young drivers start to adorn when they show that physical type of aggression, especially early in their careers. This could be a chance for Bushell to be able to prove he is fast and he can get the job done without having to be physical. And so far, it's been a clean night for him, and he is catching the front two who are in traffic.
He touched on that a little bit earlier this afternoon when I chatted with him too, because he ran at the Nashville Fairgrounds last weekend, and said that was just a really good opportunity, not only to reset but to get used to the speed. Nashville, he said, is a little bit faster than what you see here at New Smyrna, but it's that same sort of high banking, relatively long straightaway combo, so it gives you the opportunity to sort of get your mind in that sort of frame, especially with this event coming up on the calendar. He said it was a good warm up for here and allowed him to really sort of clear his head, get himself ready for a good run in this race, which all of a sudden Bushell really has figured out something. He was a 10th faster than Vail at the stripe last time by. Bushell now one of the fastest, if not the fastest car outright on the racetrack.
Unfortunately for Bushell, he's got about a 3-second deficit he has to try to make up on Vail, the leader. Bulger still second. The gap from first to second is about a second and a half, and then you'd fall about another second and a half back to that of Bushell, who's got clear racetrack. In fact, all three of the front runners are currently in a position where they could try to lay down as fast of a lap as possible without being hindered by traffic, but that won't be the case for the leader, Vail, who is now on the same straightaway with the last car on the lead lap in Blake Suddy.
So Bushell trying to go after Hudson Bulger, who very well known if you go to Chris Motorsports Park in Georgia. He's got wins there in full body stock car competition. He's also got a pretty accomplished Legends car resume at Atlanta Motor Speedway. So the Georgia boy has come south and running consistent, if maybe not a little bit off the pace of Jason Vail, but to throw down laps like this, as young as he is, and be this consistently quick, I feel like long term that bodes pretty well for him.
Indeed. A little bit of housekeeping. One of the drivers who just pulled down the pit lane and is going to evidently retire from the race is that of Dylan LeBeau, the points leader in the E-Mods here at New Smyrna Speedway. Limped that car down to the pit area. The race stays under green, but he will retire from this race with now just over 30 laps being complete. And Gavin Bushell is starting to close in on the battle for second with that of Hudson Bulger on the front stretch. Bulger has to go high to avoid the 10 car of Suddy, who just fell a lap off the leaders, and Bushell's going to try to pounce with a strong exit off two.
Bushell caught Suddy in a perfect place right down the middle of the back straightaway, so it really didn't slow him down all that much, but Bulger caught him in the middle of the corner, and that cost him about a tenth or two at the stripe. Bushell was faster by just under half a tenth, so the 25 car is charging toward the front, but again, we still have 70 laps almost to go in this race, so you can go make up 3 seconds if you're Gavin Bushell, but how much are you going to leave in the tank for the end of this race? Now, in my conversations with Brad May, I talked to him and he said, you know, the Pro, you really can push for a good chunk of this race. It doesn't have as much power as the super late models, so you don't have to worry about tire conservation as much, but it's a full-body stock car. At some point, you're going to have to mind the tires in some way, shape, or form, even if the amount you have to watch them is a little bit lower, right?
Bushell now working his way down to the bottom. We touched on Gavin Bushell's career trajectory, where it is right now. How about the second-place runner in Hudson Bulger out of Fort Valley, Georgia? He ran Legend cars at Atlanta Motor Speedway, won there several times in their summer Legend car program, and was fourth in the Snowflake 100, one of the big events held here last summer. He comes into the night. He's still a Pro Late Model rookie as far as New Smyrna is I would say as far as New Smyrna is concerned, but he does race around the region, and he also has Pro Late Model victories at Crisp Motorsports Park, which is another venue where several of the drivers that you'll see across both days of racing action elect to spend some of their time when New Smyrna is not running their weekly program. And right now, Bulger is doing a terrific job holding off Bushell for that second spot as he almost gets a little bit of a nudge there in the middle of 3 and 4. Bushell now peaking to the low side as they go to 1.
If it was a half lane, on Dawson Sutton. It's about a full lane. He had to check up there a little bit. He almost got into Hudson Bolger as they came out of turn 2 that last time by. So Bichelle feeling racy, aggressive with those dives into the corner, definitely making Bolger think about it a little bit. And sometimes it's half the battle. If you get a driver looking into his rearview mirror and you make him stop thinking about what's out in front of him, sometimes they're a little bit more prone to making a mistake, and I suspect that's exactly what Bichelle is trying to force out of Hudson.
It appears that maybe some more laps is all that Bichelle's teammate Dawson Sutton needed to try to join the party. He's closing up on this battle for second, as Bichelle has been unable to get up to and past Bolger just yet. Now he's got to drive down to the bottom. Can he stay alongside off at turn number 2? He's got the fender to the inside in 3, and here comes Gavin Bichelle to try to move up to second. Bolger fighting back on the outside.
Got a little bit loose on the exit of turn 4 did Bichelle. He'll run it up the racetrack. They almost touched. They may have touched on the entry to turn 1, but Bichelle will make the pass and move up to second, and it's just 2 lap cars between Bichelle and Jason Vale. All the while, Bichelle was right on the lap times that Vale was running, even while he was battling Hudson Bolger. So now that he's about to get a little bit of clean track once he laps these few cars ahead of him, we'll see what the stopwatches look like for Vale, and for Bichelle, we'll get a good sense of whether or not we'll have a battle for the lead shortly.
And tip of the cap to Bichelle, because as they came off turn number 4, he could have doored the side of the 17, and he pulled way down to give as much breathing room as possible in that fierce battle for the runner-up position. Bichelle wanted to make sure if he was going to get that pass made, he was going to do it cleanly, and he is now trying to set sail on Jason Vale, the race leader. Last time around, the margin was about 2 seconds. Both drivers have some clear running room. What can Bichelle do now that he only has one more target out the windshield, and that is the race leader, who's only run one pro late model race this season here at New Smyrna, finished 5th, trying to better that by a big way than his one and only July pro late model start here, as he has led all the way since the drop of the green, coming up to halfway about 5 laps from now.
It is clear racetrack ahead of both of them, and now we'll get a good sense of what kind of cars they have. Nothing to worry about so far as lap traffic is concerned. Vale was a 10th faster than Bichelle that last time by. So did Bichelle use up his tires and or heat them up a little bit too much in that charge to the front to be able to get to Jason Vale? They come back to the stripe, and yet again, Vale a 10th faster than Bichelle. So Bichelle may need an opportunity to cool off the tires, but you run up high here at New Smyrna, that's not particularly hard because you've got options, you've got lanes, and you can find places to maybe not relax, but just pace yourself a little bit more before you make that big charge up towards the lead.
Saw perhaps a slight sign of weakness out of the race leader off turn 4 last time by, but it did not reflect on the stopwatch. That car got really loose coming off the 4th corner. We'll have to keep our eyes on how good or how healthy that right rear tire is as we see the leader come back down, but the battle for 3rd is beginning to intensify.
Hudson Bolger has backed up, and Dawson Sutton is now on his rear bumper, ready to make a move as we approach halfway in our first feature race of the evening. 100 laps for the Pro Late Models here, the prelude to the 58th Annual Governor's Cup at New Smyrna Speedway. Watching Dawson Sutton try and go get Hudson Bolger for what would be the 3rd position. That's now the best battle on the racetrack.
Sutton only missed the pole in qualifying earlier this afternoon by 11 thousandths of a second. That put him up on the outside lane where he lost a couple of spots early in the going, but he has now found his groove as the laps continue to click off, and he is separated by about